Today we'll take a critical look at photo gear benchmarking and especially at the DXO Mark. Also some travel photography tips for Corey who can't decide if he should upgrade his gear before the vacation. This episode still doesn't have a sponsor. I know this is not what you want to hear. You came here for the photo talk. We'll get to that in just a minute. Feel free to skip ahead. But if you like what I do here and if you feel it's worth your time to send out, I don't know, a little tweet or a little Facebook post or go to Patreon and throw $1 in the hat, there are many ways for you to help keep the lights on. And many of you are already doing that every week. And I'm very, very grateful for that. Check out tfttf.com/support. Thank you. This is Tips from the Top Floor, episode 796 for Thursday, October the 26th, 2017.
Tips from the top floor, tips from the top, alright, from the top floor.
Hey, hello, welcome, it's Chris Marquardt. You're listening to Tips from the Top Floor, the longest running photography show on the planet. I am stretching again. I have weird times of recording these shows, but hey, I'm pretty sure you have weird times listening to the shows. I still want to know where you listen, how you listen. Pick up your smartphone, record it on your voice memo app, send it to voice@tfttf.com. Let me know when you listen, how you listen. We had a guy working underground. We had someone swimming while listening. There must be weirder places where you listen to this show. Okay, it's another one that's pre-recorded because I'm at this point, when you listen to this, probably in Bhutan, in the Himalayan kingdom, the kingdom of happiness. And I'm there with a wonderful group of photographers. And we are going to, we'll spend almost 2 weeks there going to different festivals and seeing a lot of just amazing stuff. The people, the landscape, the culture. Bhutan is this place that has like very strictly limited tourism. I believe the number I heard is like that they have like 70,000 tourists a year. Do the math. That's nothing. That is pretty much nothing. So when you get there, you will meet people you'll meet a culture that is very original, very much the way it has always been. And there's a whole story. Bhutan, Bhutan. Google it, read up on it. It's a great place to be. It's a wonderful place to visit. People are very nice, very happy, very. I've been to places where there's a lot of tourism and people. We'll just adapt to it, and then you get places that are more touristy. Bhutan is none of that. It's wonderful. Mountain kingdom in the Himalayas. We're not going to do a hiking tour. This is going to be a photo tour. We will have our own bus. We will take tribes and go to places and go to hotels. We'll visit Tiger's Nest, of course, which is one of the most amazing monasteries up in the mountains. I still don't really know how they built it because it's really high up. And it's high up in the mountains, but we'll kind of hike up there. I think that's the only real hike we will be doing, which will be like a 3-4 hour hike, slightly up the hill. Not climbing, just a walk through the forest. Pretty much, it is just mind blowing. The whole infrastructure. Buddhism is big there, so you have a lot of beautiful colors. You have a lot of prayer flags. Prayer flags, not as much like in Nepal or in Tibet where you have the prayer flags on a string, but they have these sticks in the ground, like 20, 30, 40, 50 of them, and flags on it. It's a beautiful sight to see, and I'm so looking forward to that. Been planning this for such a long time. Anyway, so that is Bhutan coming up pretty soon. Just in a few days I will fly out. And then this episode, again, I'm not sure how short this one's going to be because I have a bit of a rant coming up and also want to answer at least one question that one of you sent in. So let's get into this first thing. And I'm pretty sure I will get a lot of emails about this. People, I'm pretty sure I will get a lot of "but if" emails. But look, and it's about benchmarking. It's a thing that came up recently. Benchmarking. You know, benchmarking. Like if you have a mobile device or a Mac or even PCs, I guess, Geekbench, for example. That's a thing that you put your computer through its paces and it spits out a number at the end that is a composite of graphics performance and CPU performance and memory performance and disk performance, network, and so on. So we all have this tendency to want to put things in lists. And on the top of the list is the best, and on the bottom of the list is the worst. And that's a natural tendency. I remember when I was 15, 16, I used to read audio magazines and decide which cassette, yeah, that's how old I am, which cassette deck to get based on these kind of ratings. And yeah, there's lots of these kind of benchmarks. Or back in the day, I used to be a PC guy. I used to build my own PCs and for gaming, and there were graphics benchmarks. I'm pretty sure they're still there. And then at one benchmark, NVIDIA comes out better than other manufacturers, and then everyone buys the NVIDIA card. And just you use these just to kind of try to see if you manage to squeeze out another 2% of video performance. But then the problem with benchmarks is, as soon as you know, as a manufacturer, as soon as you know what the benchmark does, how it works, you'll be able to cheat it. And we'll see the same. We did see the same thing during VW's diesel scandal. When you put your car on one of those test machines, that's a benchmark. That's a way to test if the car performs to the specifications, and or especially if the car's emissions are within the specifications. And then what did Volkswagen do? They programmed some of their cars to detect that benchmarking situation. So the cars had this, what I think they call the defeat device. It's kind of this thing that that detects, oh, I'm in a benchmarking situation. It looks like steering wheel and times that it runs at a specific temperature and that kind of stuff. And then when it detects that, it will go into this super clean mode. But then as soon as you're out in the real world, you are not on the benchmarking test rig. And then that's when the car turns off those super clean settings, and then you will get a much dirtier car that performs better. That's what companies will do. If there is a benchmark that decides if you can sell your product, and that's what these benchmarks do, then someone will try to game the system. That's how it works. Now, how does this tie into photography? Well, recently I came across a video by Marques Brownlee, MKBHD. If the more techie ones among you will probably know him. He's on YouTube. He is pretty big there, well-known channel, does gear tests and stuff. And in one of his recent videos, he talked about a very well-known benchmark in the photographic community, and that's the DXO Mark. You've heard of it, right? DXO Mark spits out a number at the end and says, this camera has 97 on the DXO Mark, and this camera has only 91 on the DXO Mark. So what does DXO do? Well, they benchmark photo gear. Cameras, lenses, and smartphone cameras and stuff. It's all photographic. And at the end of their benchmarking procedure, out pops a single number. Let's look at Canon 5D Mark IV. That's my workhorse camera, has a DXO Mark of 91. And then the new Nikon D850, that has a DXO Mark of 100. Or the Red Epic Dragon video camera has a DXO Mark of 101. And there's another camera, I think it's another Red, that has a DXO Mark of, I think, 116. Yep, that's the first thing. Yes, there are cameras that have a DXO Mark of over 100. Most people assume that was a percentage. It's not. It's a scale that will expand in the future as the cameras get better. And I believe there are several really serious problems with the DXO Mark. And MKBHD does believe that too. And making a purchasing decision based on this benchmark might not be that good of an idea. I would actually go out on a limb and say that the DXO Mark doesn't really mean anything. Okay, now bring on the emails. No, before you bring on the emails and comments, let me elaborate on that. So first, the single-digit DXO Mark is a composite of 3 values only. We're talking the DXO Mark for cameras here. It's a composite of 3 values. They go for color depth, dynamic range, and low light ISO. That's it. That's all there is. There's not a single factor that has, I don't know, has to do with usability, handling, menus, battery, the lens ecosystem, durability, water tightness. I could go on. I could name a million things that could have gone into this test. Nope. DxO based their camera DxO Mark on color depth, dynamic range, and low light ISO. And that's a problem in itself. I don't expect a full camera test, but just spitting out one number and making it kind of the thing that the press goes with, and that's the goal. I mean, that's the goal here. The press, the media love simple solutions. So they will flock to numbers. And that number doesn't mean anything because your focus might be on something completely different. Color depth? Well, if the camera's at 95 or at 100 in color depth, doesn't really make a difference. You will not be able to see that difference. Same with dynamic range. If it has 14 or 15 stops, doesn't make any real world difference. Low light ISO, again, if you put the top spec cameras next to each other today, they will all perform almost the same. Within limits, of course, but as far, I would go on a limb and say you won't be able to tell the difference with your eyes. Maybe in the lab, yes, of course. I'm not saying DxO does any shenanigans there. They totally believe that DxO tests are scientific and thorough. But they're only testing 3 values. That's the first critique point that, well, how can you take these 3 things and make that into a comprehensive number of how good a camera is? So sure, go ahead and do that. But the second problem is they weigh those different things into that one result in, well, some way. What does that weighing say? If I need a camera that has very good portrait performance, I can, of course, go by color depth if I want to, or I can go and compare 2, 3, 4 cameras, do a blind test with the results, and then decide on which one looks best. And I bet the color depth is only a very small part in that calculation. Now, again, I believe the tests are scientific. I have no reason to doubt that. They're thorough, they're scientific. They have standardized conditions there, which is what you should do for testing. But only those 3 parameters, and then the weighing is up to them. And if you look into the details on these parameters, I mean, you can dig down. There's little question marks next to these results, these individual results. Click on the question mark, pop up the explanation, and then look what they say about how likely you are to notice a change of so and so many points. Pretty much all those cameras are in the same ballpark. Now, again, there's a composite. It's a question how they weigh that. That's one of the big things. But now, the one thing that MKBHD says, and that I that kind of pushed me over the top here, is that he claims, and I have no doubt to not believe him there, that DxO also is a consultancy for camera manufacturers to help them. I was like, what? You can as a camera manufacturer, you can pay DxO money, and they will work with you to make your cameras perform better in their own benchmark. That's what I read out of MKBHD's video. I will link that here in the show notes, but yeah, that is just something that I don't see any transparency here. I do not see any transparency here, and for that reason, my personal opinion is that the DXO Mark isn't worth anything. All right, bring it on. Bring on the mails. Take apart my logic. I'd be happy to discuss these things with you. Even better, if you send them in via voicemail, I'd be happy to play them here on the show. voice@tfttf.com. That's where you send them. Just record them with the voice memo app of your choice and send them to voice@tfttf.com. The same is, by the way, true if you have a question, if you have some feedback in general, if you have an anecdote, if you want to tell me where you and how you listen to the show, the weirder the better, send that to voice@tfttf.com. voice@tfttf.com as well. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Good night, Chris. This is Corey from Toronto. I'm traveling to Thailand in November, and I wanted to know what would be the best combination body lens to travel. At the moment, I have a Canon T2i, Rebel T2i, and the standard 18-55mm lens. Is it me worth getting a mid-range one, like the 24-105mm lens? And is it worth me buying it new, or buying it used would be okay? That's all. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Corey. It's my favorite kind of question because I get so many of them. What lens should I buy? What should I buy? And that always implies that you can become a better photographer by buying something new. But yeah, I totally understand the sentiment. Let's go through your list. You had a T2i, and that's a good camera. In general, the limitation is often not the camera; it's the photographer. It's the skill of the photographer. I'm not saying you're a bad photographer because I don't know your photography, but I've seen this countless times with myself. My gear was always better than my skills. My gear is hardly ever the limiting factor, only in a few rare edge cases. The sensors today are plenty good for almost everything I do. And that even goes for my tiny Canon 100D, the SL1. What limits my photography is stuff like my imagination, my planning, my eye, my skills, even my lack of willingness to get up at 5 a.m. sometimes. Apart from very few edge cases, the camera does never limit what I do. Okay, so again, you're shooting with a T2i. That's a great camera. No need to do anything there. Just use that. In general, if you don't know if you should invest in a camera or in lenses, I suggest to spend more on lenses. Good glass is always going to be better than using a really expensive camera. This is this great video. I've mentioned this a few times here on the show. Kai Wong Keep test. This is a couple of years old, but it's still very valid. He used a pro camera and a beginner's camera, and then he used a cheap lens on the pro camera, and he used a pro lens on the cheap camera. And the verdict is very clear. Very, very clear. The lenses are where the magic is when you're looking at improving image quality in general. I'll link the video in the show notes. So from a lens point of view, you're shooting with a kit lens, the 18-55. In general, if that lens was the only lens I had for a vacation, I know I could get really good results with that. Again, if you learn how to do exposure well and good image composition, the gear becomes secondary. But okay, let's still look at the tech. A word about kit lenses. They are great value for the money. If you buy one without a camera, it'll be really not that expensive. But then in general, you get those kits where they just come with the camera. They offer a pretty good range from wide angle to medium telephoto, medium wide angle to medium telephoto, and everything in between, which is good because that's, as a beginner, what you want. They are most of the time not too bright, so it means they don't let as much light in as you sometimes need. But I haven't shot with the kit lens in a while, but I think the newer kit lenses even have image stabilization, if I'm not wrong. They're also not as robust as some of the more expensive, in air quotes, pro lenses. My favorite travel lens for the longest time, by the way, was that 24-105 that you mentioned, which is robust. Now, you have to keep in mind the T2i is a crop camera. It has an APS-C sensor. So that means the 24-105 is more equivalent, in full frame equivalent to 40 to 170 millimeters, about that. So compared to your kit lens, you will lose a bit of wide angle. You will gain telephoto, but you will lose wide angle. Now, if you don't shoot a lot of wide angle, then that's not a problem. And you will gain a lot of telephoto. The 55, the 105, that's almost double the telephoto. That will allow you to zoom in on stuff that's further away. And that's just something to keep in mind. The 24-105 also has good image stabilization. And it's an f4 lens throughout. So you have the widest open aperture f4 through the entire zoom range, which is also helpful. The kit lenses, I believe, vary that. So you have a different open aperture at the long end than at the wide end. So that's one of the differences. And the image quality of the 24-105 is pretty decent. It's pretty good. It's an L lens, which for Canon means that I think that's a professional designation, even though I do not agree with that for all the lenses. But it's a bit more robust, definitely. It has a bit of color fringing at the wide end. Like if you shoot really at the 24 end, especially towards the edges, you will probably see some fringing. But on the one hand, you can automatically correct for that in Lightroom. That is quite efficient. And second, you're probably not seeing those edges because your sensor is smaller, so that these edges are mostly invisible. So that won't be a problem. You'll pick out the sweet spot in the center of that lens. What I suggest, and in general, before you and anyone else does a big purchasing decision like that, I suggest you test the lens. Get it, rent it for a week. Go to lensrentals.com. There's plenty of other ones. Maybe your local photo store has one that they can lend you for a weekend, and then play with it and see, or get it from someplace that has a good return policy, and then test the heck out of it. See if it works for you. See if the range works for you. You won't make a mistake if you buy one. It's a full frame capable lens, so it doesn't have a bayonet that only works on the smaller sensors. It'll work on any Canon EOS camera, even on full frame, even in the future. So that's a future-proof investment. And the only thing you'll have to figure out is the zoom range enough for your needs? Does it zoom far enough in and out? And also, are you willing to carry around a lens that is heavier than your kit lens? Go test it. Hey, that was it for this episode of Tips from the Top Floor. Thank you so much for being around. You guys are the reason I make this show. I record a new episode every week. Bring them on. Bring on your emails. Send me feedback. Controversial one this time, but hey, I'm braced to take it. It'll just take a week or two for me to answer because I'm still gone on the photo tour.
I remember that you said it ain't as easy as it
The bouquet Slack challenge is still up right now. If you want to participate on the TFTTF Slack, go to tfttf.com/yslack, WHYSLACK. And again, send in a question for the show. Speak it into your voice memo app and send it to voice@tfttf.com. That's voice@tfttf.com. If you're one of the amazing people who help the show by supporting it in one of many different ways, hey, you are making all the difference. Find out more at tfttf.com/support. Thank you so much. Music for the show by Jeff Smith, by Silent Partner and Hans-Peter Kagrut Publishing, and Slack challenges by Release Pixie, Matt Rafter Armstead. Slack invitations by Chief Invitation Officer, CIO Russ. My name's Chris Marquardt. Follow me on Facebook and on Twitter at Chris Marquardt, Chris MARQUARDT. Go out and take amazing photos. Be nice to each other, and happy shooting.